Go ahead and start on time. If I can get everybody's attention, we'll go ahead and call the County Council Budget Retreat to order. Today is Thursday. If I can get everybody's attention, please. Today is Thursday, April 10th. We are starting the budget retreat on time so we can finish on time. We do have a lot to do. Let's start the way we always do with the invocation followed by the pledge. If I can get everybody to please stand. Dear Lord, thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon us, especially the biggest blessing of all, that we get to live and work here in Horry County and worship you, and thank you for all the blessings you've given us. Thank you for the opportunity to do this budget and remind us that we get to do it. We don't have to do it. This is a pleasure to serve everybody that lives and works in Horry County. Give us wisdom and most of all patience as we go through today. And thank you for all the continued guidance that you share with us. In your name we pray. Amen. Attention to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. I would just like to make a couple of comments. I want to remind everybody that this is, like any meeting, is being taken down for posterity. We'll have minutes recorded. So when you speak, make sure you push the talk button. It's the bottom one on the right. Speak into your microphone so we can hear you. We want to hear what you got to say. And speaking of what you got to say, the speakers have spent a lot of time, worked very hard to make this presentation. So I'd encourage everybody to listen to it and hold your questions to the end. More times than not, they will answer your question before they finish, and so we'll just keep moving forward. So press to talk, hold your questions to the end. Mr. Barry Spivey will give an overview. Mr. Spivey.
Good morning to everyone. I welcome you to this budget retreat. I wanted to give you a little orientation for the information that you do have in front of you here. You will see that you do have a booklet, a notebook with all the particular details of our budget in it, as well as the presentations that we'll be making today so that you can follow along with that. In addition to that, you will see two additional items, which are similar to what we have done over the last few years. There's a summary of the budget and a summary of the capital plan. This is something that hopefully is helpful to you as you may be out away from your office or desk or any of that, and it has a quick summary of all the information that you will be presented today. So it's good reference in that regard. This morning, we want to just remind you that this is an informal meeting. We hope this is a discussion and that we have questions and we can answer those questions for you in that regard. We will discuss today a mid-year update where we are at the moment from a fiscal year 2025. We'll look at our 5-year financial forecast, the CIP or Capital Improvement Plan and related debt service that is funding that. Our public safety will give us an update. We'll have an update from the airport as well as the Solid Waste Authority. And then we'll do a 2026 budget overview to give you some of the high-level actions that we'll be taking. We do have first reading of the budget on the agenda today, as well as two additional action items. The first is a budget transfer resolution. And you may remember that usually about this time we are looking at those projects as we're looking at the budget, what needs to happen next year, if we have extra money right now or moving money from one project to another, try to support those priorities. That is what we will share with you today. I would say this year that amount is smaller than potentially we normally do at this point in time intentionally. And the last item is the Fantasy Harbor Admissions Tax District Resolution designating an additional project under that entity that we have some remaining funds for. To give you a quick summary, and we will go through the details of these and we'll expound on each one, but our budget for fiscal year 2026 is $869.9 million. That is an increase of $36 million over fiscal year 25. On the general fund, That's $303.6 million, or a $27 million increase. So the majority of our increase is actually occurring in the general fund, which is people. And we'll talk more about that in a short while. This budget contains no millage increase. This budget contains no fee increases within our organization to our customers in that regard. There are recommendations that are in this budget for an employee raise, and we'll go through the details of that. That's across the board. But we also did some very targeted market adjustments on some critical positions that we have within our organization. And that is to our public safety side and our heavy equipment operators, and we'll go through those details as well. We are maintaining our existing level of service with this recommendation. There's 114 new positions that will be shared with you. 77 of those are in public safety, as you would expect. 17 at the airport with the expanded terminal that will be delivered during this fiscal year and operational, as well as 11 in INR. If you look at our population, we continue to see a rapid increase. We estimate that currently we're sitting up just under 440,000 people in Horry County. That means we are currently the third largest county in the state, and the projections of our growth are even greater. In 2030, we're looking at over 500,000. In 2035, over 600,000 population in Horry County. And at that point, and by 2030, we will be the second largest county in the state. We will address our capital needs. You will see that in the details we will present today. We have a placeholder, and we want to remind council of this. I believe you may remember that we have shared this on our multiple presentations. We have a study underway for our detention center. And until we get the results of that study and that analysis and try to make a decision, we don't know what the cost of that will be. But we do have a placeholder in our budget of $62.5 million for the potential cost there. But just remind council that it could both affect our operating budget as well as our debt service millage, depending on what that cost ultimately becomes. Now, what's not in the numbers? First, I think you may remember we've tried to remind you and remind our entire team and the public that Horry County is a service organization. We provide those services through our most important resource, and that's our employees. And honestly, we exist for the sole purpose or express purpose of service to our community. And we do that through our people. This budget does absorb operational inflationary impacts. We still see those occurring in vehicles, in contract services, in supplies. Those are impacting the budget and have been forecasted in that regard. And our budget currently covers those things. We continue to implement software and other technologies to assist our employees with the growth that we're having to make us more efficient. We reward and desire innovation within our ranks. And I think you will see more on that issue as we move forward into this year. This budget does preserve our reserves and contingencies intentionally as we look forward. In unassigned fund balance, we're maintaining those. In fact, our general fund, with what's predicted here, should have a remaining unassigned fund balance of $50 million after this budget absorbs a portion of that. Our CIP contingency is just under $10 million, and that's being held. Hospitality, we have available resources there of around $30 million. And ARPA, we still have resources around $24 million. And then we have our Ride 2 excess, which is just, I think, around $65 to $70 million today that has not been deployed. We feel like this budget represents a stewardship to our taxpayers because it incorporates a vacancy variance, which we have not used in several years. But we recognize we have vacancies within our organization. And I think right now we're at 220 Full-time positions, which represent 7.4% of our workforce, is vacant. And we're leveraging that to add the new people and add the new compensation to our employees. And we're using prior year excess revenues. You will see in what Ms. Todd will share with you that we certainly are expecting almost 20 million or just less than 20 million of excess revenues for 2025 in our general fund. So we're leveraging that and returning that to our taxpayers through our use of fund balance in that regard. I think it's a conservative budget, and it does lay the groundwork for a topic we've discussed for several years, and that is local option sales tax. So we will update council on that program today, but I think this gives us the opportunity to work towards a potential referendum for our community. And the last item I wanted to share with you is about Horry County government. I think, and this is my opinion, you may agree or disagree with me, but I think Horry County or county government is the most complex government in the state. Now, we're very similar to municipalities in that we have an elected governing body. And in our case, it's actually single-member districts for the 11 and the council as county-wide in that regard. And we have appointed officials, clerk to council, the administrative positions, various boards, committees, and those things. So we're very similar to a municipality in that regard. But then we're very different from a municipality and almost very similar to the state that we have constitutional and statutory officers that are elected by the people that serve alongside of us. This makes it a very collaborative government in that regard. Then after those positions, we actually have a lot of influence that still impacts us with our legislative delegation. They set up our County Transportation Commission. They appoint our magistrates, our master in equity, public defender, registration elections, and a number of those different things. And even on top of that, then we have regional oversight from various organizations that impact us from a funding standpoint that we participate in with the Waccamaw Regional Council of Governments and as well as NESA. Northeastern Strategic Alliance, all deal with the allocation of funds from the state and federals in that respect. Then in addition to that, we have certain mandates that are imposed upon us by the state. We have the Department of Health and Human Services that we provide offices for, Department of Environmental Services, Department of Social Services, our delegation office, probation patrol, our whole court system, alcohol and drug abuse services, detention facilities, and solid waste, as well as the administrative duties for the solicitor and public defender, and the list just keeps going on and on. So if you think about what we do, we're unique in that respect of any other local government in terms of the scope of responsibilities that we have and the opportunities we have to serve. So I think what you'll see in the budget today kind of reflects those things. I believe, or at least I think, you will see that we've done a good job of being good stewards to our citizens. I personally want to thank, before we get into the presentation today, thank Randy, David, Shannon, Judy, David, Jordan, Michaela, my direct team, but really it's our entire organization that has brought this proposal and this recognition to you today. We especially want to thank our financial team. We have Ms. Jamie Norman, Jacob Mitchell, Dara Lundy, and Victoria Worley, as well as from the airport, Ms. Virginia Blunt, and from Solid Waste Authority, we have Ms. Jan Bidding and Trina Cook. These are the ones that help bring this product that you see here today, and we appreciate their efforts in that regard. So it's my pleasure to turn the presentation over to our Assistant County Administrator and Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Shannon Todd.
Good morning. So before we can talk about where we're going in 26, we need to take a look at where we are. And all these numbers are from month end February. So revenues thus far, we've reached $330.8 million, with 69% of that being in the general fund, whereas expenditures at $212.3 million, with 73.8% of that being in general fund. This is a new way to look at it that we haven't done in the past. So again, this is through month end of February. So looking at real property tax collections, we've reached 100% of the budgetary amounts we projected collectively across all funds. In comparison to prior years, slightly ahead for this time frame, whereas 23 and 24 we are at 95%. Doing a similar comparison for personal property tax, current collections are at 90% of the budgeted amounts, whereas prior years were slightly up at 93 and 95. But do note that we are higher in revenue, whereas this year we're at 11.9. Last year we would have been at 11.7 at the same time frame. Looking at vehicles, we're trending a bit higher for this time frame, so current collections at 78%, which accounts for 17.5 million, and opposed to prior years at 73-74% range. Looking at our economic sensitive revenues, we're trending up in all categories over prior year. So our hospitality 1% is up 3.24%. Hospitality 1.5%, which is countywide, is up 1.28%. And our local accommodations tax up 3.95%, and state accommodation tax up 6.21%. So utilizing trends from months thus far through the fiscal year, we're able to project, and within reason, expectations through the end of the year. So as for revenues within the general fund, we're expecting to receive 7% more than what we budgeted, totaling around $19 million. Majority of these increases are from property tax, as we took a conservative approach during the budget last year and built in buffers for expectancies of more appeals than usual due to it being a reassessment year. Also, additional revenue received in both vehicle tax and fee in lieu, as well as interest, as we're projecting $7 million more than what we built in the budget. As for expenditures, we're projecting a savings of 4% of budget amounts, which equates to $11.5 million. Savings are largely due to vacancy variance and savings in our business and transportation. So that will bring our projected fund balance within general fund to $180.9 million come fiscal year end. That's an increase of $20 million, and as Barry noted earlier, combined with last year's $50 million. So we'll move into our 5-year forecast. So all funds are in a relatively neutral place in terms of maintaining our current level of service. So looking at general fund specifically, you will note it is flagged green but facing down, and that's largely due to general fund having a bulk of the personnel and inflationary costs. However, this year does utilize the use of vacancy variance and use of fund balance. Do note in future years we do not account for additional personnel to increase level of service. Fire apparatus fund, this one's yellow due to the fleet and age condition, and as we continue to grow in stations, will require higher replacement revenue here. For our road maintenance fund, we have sufficiency in recurring revenue and the funding for Coast RTA transition from RIDE 4 by referendum. Beach renourishment fund will experience inflationary impacts here, but we have sufficient fund balance to fund the local match portion for the Arcadian Shores project. And our fire fund will also see inflationary impacts, but we also utilize vacancy variance and use of fund balance here for fiscal year 26. And we did add additional personnel in fiscal year 26, but none in the years coming ahead. Stormwater fund, we have sufficiency in recurring revenues, although frequency of large events will always be a concern here. Recreation fund, this projection does include additional revenues and expenditures for the 3 new centers coming online, and it has sufficient recurring revenues at the current level of service. Economic development has sufficiency in recurring revenue, and lease has been extended through 2027. Our 911 communications fund is a restricted fund for capital and limited operations, has sufficiency in recurring revenues, but we are closely monitoring the possibility of state reducing their funding levels here. And our waste management fund, we'll see inflationary impacts here, but it includes capital and continued growth, as well as a projected tipping fee increase for fiscal year 26, which you will see later this afternoon. Any questions?
Good morning. So today I will be presenting a quick look at the capital improvement plan and debt service for the next 10 years. So the entire 10-year plan is in your packet. I'm just going to be mentioning the major projects during this presentation. So taking a look at FY26 funding sources, we do have a bond issuance this year. We have a general bond of $30.4 million, which will cover Phase 2 and 3 of the public safety training facility, as well as construction of a new EMS station in the Windy Hill section of North Myrtle Beach. The GO bond will also cover half of the expense of construction of the new Prestwick Fire EMS station and renovation of the Goretown Fire Station to convert it to a fire and EMS station. A fire bond of $3.5 million will be issued to cover the other half of construction of Prestwick and Goretown. The road fund will contribute $12.7 million. $2.5 million will be coming from stormwater fund, $820,000 from intergovernmental revenue. This is CTC funding and Sunday alcohol sales. A total of $5.6 million will be coming from the general fund for recurring and one-time projects. Impact fees will contribute $7.8 million, and other funds will contribute $9.3 million. And this is fire fund, recreation fund, emergency telephone fund, and waste management recycling funds. So total FY26 funding is $72.7 million. So these are the FY26 major projects broken down into their categories. For public safety facilities, almost $37 million. These are the projects that I previously mentioned. General government facilities, at $5 million, we have library renovations, renovation of the Saunders Building, and a land purchase for economic development. INR facilities at $1.5 million. This is for purchase of land for the new Loris Recreation Center, as well as paving at the Public Works Complex at Privets Road. Parks and Recreation Facilities, $5.8 million. This is mostly impact fee funding for multiple parks, trails, boat landing projects, as well as the addition of some beach bathrooms. Technology and equipment, $2.7 million. Most of these are ongoing projects with the exception of the Pleasant View Tower generator. That is a new addition. Stormwater management, $2.4 million. These are all projects to continue their drainage improvement efforts. Public transportation infrastructure, $13.2 million. Again, these are all projects that are ongoing, with the exception of the Prince Creek Parkway and South Carolina 707. This is for construction of a turn lane to help improve that intersection. Wetland mitigation, $672,000. These are carry forward monies from prior years. And waste management recycling at $4.4 million. This is for a new Forest Brook facility, expansion of the Scipio Lane facility, and land purchases for future facilities. And again, that total is $72.7 million. So looking at the 10-year view for projected funding, we have general obligation bonds at $218.5 million, fire bonds at $33.8 million, intergovernmental at just over $8 million, general fund recurring and one-time contributions of $38.5 million, road fund at $131 million, stormwater fund at $27 million, impact fee funding at just over $38 million, and other funding of almost $60 million. So the total projected funding for this 10-year period is $555.6 million. So looking at the expenditures for the next 10 years, public safety facilities at almost $203 million. In addition to the projects I mentioned previously, we have multiple projects for fire EMS stations. We have phase 4 of the public safety training facility, 2 phases of renovations for the J. Rue Malone Detention Center, as well as the addition of a 6th police precinct. General government facilities at $78.9 million. Again, projects that I previously mentioned, and also 2 phases of renovations for this building that we're in currently, and renovations to various buildings throughout the county, as well as multiple land purchases for economic development. INR facilities at $6.4 million. This includes a fleet expansion, and funds for a public works equipment shed. Parks and recreation facilities at almost $33 million. Most of this, again, is impact fee funding for parks, trails, boat landings, and beach accesses. $33 million for technology and equipment. Most of this is just for recurring expenses, with the exception of a 911 system replacement and Motorola radio upgrades. Stormwater fund at just over $26 million. All these monies, again, are to continue their efforts. Waste management recycling at $26.5 million. This is for multiple center expansions, a new Brooksville center, and money for additional land purchases. Public transportation infrastructure at just over $136 million. Again, these are to continue their road improvement efforts. And finally, wetland mitigation at $12.4. We have added money here to begin the second wetland bank. So again, total expected expenditures over the next 10 years, $555.6 million. This slide shows our anticipated debt issuances for FY26 through FY35. The general obligation bond that you see in 27 is the placeholder that Mr. Spivey mentioned for the detention center at $60 million. For FY2034, the issuance for $20 million is for the renovation to this building. And the issuance in 2035 is for the second phase of the J. Reuben Long renovation, as well as phase 4 of the public safety training facility. And those are both at $20 million apiece. So the anticipated GO bonds for the 10-year period is $221.6 million. For fire bonds, the 10-year total of anticipated bonds is just over $34 million, and all these funds will go towards fire station additions, renovations, or replacements. So the total debt issuances for both GO and fire bonds for the 10-year period is just under $256 million. And I will mention that this plan does maintain our current debt millage. So this graph shows our existing and future debt issuances for 2025 to 2035. Again, this plan maintains our existing debt millage, and it does not include any changes to the current impact fees. This graph shows the existing and future debt issuances over the same 10-year period for our fire debt, and impact fees are going to pay a portion of the debt service here for the fire stations. So now I wanted to show you some of our recently completed projects. So this is the Michael Morris Graham Accessible Playground. They just held their ribbon cutting on March 26th. This is for the Piver building. They went in and did demolition on the first and second floors, and they were upfitted and reconstructed to meet the needs of Horry County Police Department. Here are the procurement offices in the technology building. They just got a facelift with some new carpeting and paint. At the 2nd Avenue Annex in the Sheriff's Office on the 2nd floor, formerly the Thompson and Henry building. This has been upfitted for the Sheriff's Office. The existing lobby was demoed and a new one was constructed. And the space was framed for offices, and the kitchen was demoed and a larger training area was constructed. At Socastee Fire, new space was made for living quarters and office space for them, and a training room. Here are some of the projects that we have in progress. Central Coast Complex. Construction is progressing. Data and cable is being installed. The exterior doors have been put in, and brickwork on the outside of the building is being completed. Technology building, this is a project for IT. They are renovating their training room and giving them a larger break room space. And I was told when I was taking these pictures, this picture on the right is actually where council used to have their meetings. And this is the Public Works equipment shed. So when I was asking them for pictures, they said, we'll bring out the drones. So I had to show you this video because we don't typically get this view of projects. So this shed will house stormwater and public works staff offices, as well as all their heavy equipment in those bays. I just thought that was an interesting view to show you guys. And the public safety training facility. So this is the preliminary draft of the master plan. So those blue circles are phase 1. That's the test track and the concrete pad. Phase 2 will be in the red circle. That will be offices and training rooms. And then the green circle is for the coroner's office addition. And then this is just some of the other ongoing projects, so you can kind of see where we are with them. And that is all I have for you. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So just an opportunity to walk through a little bit of public safety for you, kind of what's going on and what our look is going forward. So first off, I just want to say I'm really proud of the Public Safety Department and the division, as well as all county employees. We do a great job and just a lot of work. Everybody comes together and does a lot of great things for the residents and visitors in Horry County. Public safety uses a lot of different standards, including rigorous requirements for national accreditations. So we're very proud of where we are and how we move forward in judging ourselves against others, both locally and nationally, following those accreditation processes. We're leaders in the public safety industry and recognized on the state and national level. And employees and volunteers are highly trained and competent and constantly strive to do better. Public safety is always looking for new ways to improve service delivery, including reviews of past incidents to determine what changes should be considered. And I'm proud to announce the installation of our newest department in public safety, behavioral services, which will assist in launching our multi-jurisdictional program across with no jurisdictional boundaries, moving it forward into the next level. Once again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that leadership on that. So going forward, my top priority is to make sure we maintain competitiveness with compensation at the state and local level. It's very important for us to be able to do. In addition, I'm proud to focus on finding ways to go beyond dollars, budgeted dollars, to improve our recruitment opportunities, and even more important, to enhance our ability to retain staff that we invest in. I want to make sure we stay on even keel with those around us of the opportunities and options that they have within their organizations, so we all are on the same page in terms of what we can do to enhance and maintain our employees and keep people from bouncing back and forth between jurisdictions. And we're working on that every day and even looking for ways to improve that as well. So focused on the staff safety across all the departments include better behavioral health support, improved environmental health support, such as the cancer prevention efforts and employee wellness programs. Very attentive to the providing exceptional work environment by providing leadership opportunities for our team members, so we're creating the future leaders of public safety here. Seeking input on equipment and gear from the ones who actually use it, so we can improve on our staff safety, job function, and efficiencies. And Ms. Norman went through some of the capital improvement projects that's going on in public safety currently. So the 5th precinct for the Carolina Forest area will come on board in August. Very excited to get that rolling. We're also taking a look at where are the most effective places to add ambulances and maybe even move ambulances around so they're more efficient in serving the community. So that's an ongoing opportunity for us right now. The design of the public safety training facility is underway, and as well as potential expansion of the animal care center. We're looking to acquire land for future fire stations to help address some of the ISO 10 areas that we still have within the county. The design and construction of the new Prestwick Fire EMS station is underway. And then, as been mentioned, the space needs assessment is currently ongoing for the J. Reuben Long Detention Center. And once that's brought back in the future budget cycle, we'll be talking about how we want to move forward with that project. So we've got plenty of challenges in front of us for all departments as we continue to address growth and how to efficiently provide services throughout Horry County. Continue to utilize technology where we can to augment personnel and improve effectiveness of service, as well as to improve safety of all of our personnel. And I'd be remiss if I didn't take a second to just recognize all the efforts from all public safety agencies and other county departments, as well as our partners that came across from the state and other regional areas to support us in the fires at Carolina Forest. One excellent job done there. I think everybody's very proud of the work that was done. And it's still amazing how well that went in terms of no loss of life and no serious structural damage. I also want to recognize the fact that we are now entering our most busy time of the year for public safety, and all the exceptional work that's coming to us in the future and near future with all the millions of folks that we'll be protecting, as well as our residents as we move into the summer season, and how much public safety will be impacted each and every day during the next several months. And then finally, I just want to say thank you to council. You have shown significant support and direction and leadership in supporting public safety, as well as the other county departments. And you need to recognize the fact we wouldn't be able to do what we do today if you hadn't made the decisions you've made in the past. And we just look forward to continuing to make you proud of the service that we provide and make the citizens proud of the service we provide throughout the county. So with that, any questions for public safety? All right. Thank you all very much.
Good morning. I'm happy to present the fiscal 26 budget request for the Department of Airports. Our first slide shows the calculation for the cost per enplaned passenger, or CPE. And together with our overall financial picture, the CPE is one of the most important metrics for the airport because it relates directly to the airlines. This metric is analyzed by both current and potential airlines and is also reviewed annually by our rating agencies as part of their mandated review. In summary, our airfield and terminal expenses are allocated to all of our airlines and tenants. We then deduct certain incentives. The $2.55 million is an estimate which includes certain fee waivers approved by the FAA to attract new airlines or if a current airline begins service to a new market. This slide represents our CPE trend for the past 8 years. The dip in fiscal '22 is a result of Southwest Airlines coming on board and using a significant amount of incentive dollars, thus reducing the cost per passenger for all. We try to stay in line with other small hub airports and have been very successful to date. On a national scale, MYR's CPE was 22% below the small hub average and 10% in fiscal '23 and 10% lower for those who've reported so far for fiscal '24. Our 3-year financial summary shows a modest increase in both revenue of 6.5% and expenses of 5.6% over fiscal '25, giving us a net operating loss of approximately $2 million. But non-operating revenues include passenger facility charge and customer contract fee revenue offset that loss, and these are directly related to the passengers flying out of the airport and also a per-day fee on car rentals. To drill down a bit on the increase in our operating revenue, terminal concessions, which include parking, restaurants, news, and gifts, are showing the highest increase of $1.3 million. General aviation fuel sales are expected to rise based on increase in military activity and the price of fuel. On the expense side, the $3.2 million, our increase is $3.2 million, with salaries and benefits increasing just over $2 million. Utilities are up $421,000, and supplies and maintenance up $363,000 for items such as cleaning supplies, maintenance of our cameras, our 350 cameras throughout the terminal, and maintenance service contracts. We plan to add 17 positions this year, as Ms. Norman pointed out. The majority is in our maintenance department. This will include 4 custodians and 3 in general maintenance. This is primarily due to our expansion. The majority of positions will not be added until calendar '26, after the terminal expansion is complete. For general aviation, we are budgeting an increase in sales, again due to the projected increase in military activity, as we have 2 companies on site currently performing aerial refueling. These estimates are, of course, dependent on the price of fuel in addition to their activity. And this slide captures this, our major capital projects and capital equipment are shown on this slide. Due to the ongoing terminal expansion and planning of the enabling projects for the runway rehabilitation, our new projects are minimal this year. We do need to address our limited checkpoint size, so the project to expand will begin its design process this upcoming year. We will also begin the design process for the Conway Airport apron rehab. We plan to replace certain equipment that is aging. The most expensive is the Rapid Intervention Vehicle, or the RIV, for our fire department, which has recently reached its end of life. This slide captures the status of our current capital projects. We look forward to finishing construction on our terminal by the end of the calendar year, and also finishing up phase 1 of the new parking lot, which will add 1,200 surface lot spaces, a helicopter project required by the FAA for an additional landing pad, and 2 sets of 10-bay T-hangars. Those should all be complete within 2 weeks, and the T-hangars will be available for rental on May 1st. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Okay.
Good morning. First, I'd like to say I feel honored running with Randy and Judy. I feel like I'm with the big dogs today. And I'm thankful that we could come and talk with you. We got some capital improvement plans, and it's good to see what y'all have. Your money, how that lines up. This year, is start of the biggest project the Solid Waste Authority has ever looked at doing. We permitted landfills in the past, we built bridges, and all those things. But this is going to be a heck of a year. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Our board directed staff to develop a plan that'll get us to about 2060. We couldn't transfer anything out of the county. Single-member district said, you ain't going across the river to build a landfill. And another direction was put what we needed on our existing footprint. And that's where we are today. We're going to permit 3 landfills on our existing property, including what we have there now. To get this done, going to take some mitigation. Corps of Engineers is involved. They got to say go ahead. DHEC or DES now plays a part in it. And to put all these pieces of the puzzle together, it's going to be a super undertaking. But I think with the group we got working, we think it's doable. When you're looking what the county's building, there's not one thing that you're building with capital improvement, $1 million, this building. If it was a landfill, everybody that come in that front door would take a chunk out of it. And for long, the chunk is gone. That's what happens to the landfill. We're looking at a $150 million project. Jan will come up in a moment and talk to you about our spreadsheet over how many years. But this is the time that we really need to talk later on about mandatory recycling. Up to this point, it was a do-good, feel-good thing. But we need to do everything we can do to protect that project, the landfill project. When you get a permit, they permit you something that looks like a pyramid. Footprint, so big. Height, so high. Airspace, we live and die by airspace. And the more you pack it, the tighter you pack it, the more you keep out of it, is the longer you'll be able to be at the landfill. We've been fighting a battle in Columbia for probably 3 years on tires. The state is still going by a ruling that they did 25, 30 years ago. We cannot charge over $150 a ton for a tire. They set that up 30 years ago. We've tried to get that changed. I think it's going to hang. But we will not be taking any more tires on state contracts, anything. Everybody that crosses the scale will pay $150 a ton. It doesn't sound like much, but we got 4 tractor trailers leaving the landfill every day, full of tires, going to Charlotte. And it's the only game in town, in the state. So we will not lose money on tires. You may hear from Michelin. We almost had it worked out. DHEC, us, everybody. But how things work in Columbia, Michelin, General Tire, the manufacturers, last minute, had a problem with it. So it's rolling around with the lobbyists in Columbia now, but we do have the ability to charge $150 and not take the state-type tires. And I know once that hits, you'll probably hear about it. We'd be happy to come back to I&R anytime, but I do definitely want us to sit down with this group and our board and who else ever and talk about how we keep stuff out of the landfill. Jan, you want to? I thought our budget was big, and after watching your budget, I feel kind of embarrassed with that little one.
Good morning. Just briefly, like I said, in our budget this year, no significant increases or decreases other than our tipping fees. We do have an increase in our tipping fees for both our municipal solid waste and our construction and demolition material. Our municipal solid waste is going up $3 a ton. Each year, our engineers give us some guidelines as to how much we need to be setting aside per ton for closure, post-closure, and future landfill construction. Their recommendation was $3, or $4, excuse me, $4 a ton. We only had to go up $3 on our municipal solid waste to cover that. With our construction and demolition material, we did go up $12 per ton this year. That, in large part, as Danny mentioned, is the significant impact that we're seeing on our C&D landfill, in that we are going to be out of space in about 4 years, which is why we're looking at 3 different locations within our facility where we can possibly put this C&D material. We know we're going to have to co-dispose for a few years until we get this mitigated, permitted, and constructed. So those are the things that we're looking at, and we feel like that the people that are currently bringing the material in need to be help pay for that future facility. So that's why we've seen those significant increases in our tipping fees. Other than that, our budget has no significant increases in expenses or in revenue. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Good job, Jan. Thanks again, letting us be here and be part of the deal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good job.
All right, so what you've all been waiting for is what is actually in the 26 budget. So for 26, as Mr. Spivey mentioned earlier, our total is $869.9 million. That is an increase of $36 million over prior year. Includes compensation increases as well as inflationary impacts. There's an additional 114 new positions added, and that's to maintain our current level of service. This is a $9.7 million investment. Some revenue highlights. We did take a conservative approach to the growth in tax revenue at 3% over 25 actuals, and that is 10% over 25 budgeted amounts. There's very minimal increases to interest as we expect a decline in the future, and our ROD revenue is trending down at 10%. Expenditure highlights, contractual services are trending higher than in the years past, as we're seeing increases on an average of 7% opposed to the normal 5%. Cuts were made in over prior year in both supplies and materials and business and transportation countywide. And there was also increases in insurances over prior year, which I'll touch on in just a moment. Compensation is a key element in our 26 budget, as marketable increases are suggested across the workforce and targeted positions increases in addition to that. And lastly, we are closely monitoring changes at the federal and state government levels. We do expect to see the Department of Government Efficiency to trickle down to the state and local levels in the coming future, and as well as uncertainty in future grant funding. Looking at general fund revenues, 61% comes from property, personal, and vehicle tax. That's totaling nearly $184 million. An increase of $12 million over prior year. 6% is from intergovernmental, totaling $19.3 million. Slight increase here of $764,000. 13% from fees and fines, totaling $38.3 million. An increase of $676,000. 7% from license and permits, totaling $22.5 million. That's a $2 million increase over prior year. And as I mentioned with ROD, the documentary stamps accounts for 3% of our total revenue at $8.7 million, with almost $1 million decrease over prior year. The remaining 10% is a mix of transfers, interest, and other, totaling $30.5 million, a $12 million increase over prior year. And do note we have a use of fund balance of $11 million built in this budget, for a total of $303.6 million, a $27 million increase. Looking at expenditures in general fund, contractual services totaling $31.6 million. It's an increase of $2.2 million over prior year. Insurances, we wanted to highlight here that state mandated health insurance is increasing 4.6%. That will cost an additional $1.6 million. Also, we saw large increases in our auto liability insurance going up 30% and comprehensive and collision going up 15%. That accounts for another $1 million increase over prior year, and that is market-based. Cuts were made in both supplies and materials and business and transportation line items to offset some of these inflationary impacts. That decrease of nearly $2 million over prior year. One of our larger expenditure increases over prior year are additional personnel costs, with an increase of nearly $18 million over prior year, with a total just under $208 million. And the remainder includes capital outlay, transfer, and other totaling $36 million. Looking at other funds, so fire fund has a balanced budget of $47.9 million. This is an increase of $3.9 million over prior year and does utilize the use of fund balance of $866,000. This is due to new positions added as well as those targeted compensation increases. Road maintenance fund has a balanced budget of $22.4 million, increase of $360,000 over prior year. Debt service fund has a balanced budget of $17.5 million with an increase of $2.1 million. Stormwater fund has a balanced budget of $18 million, increase of $678,000. Waste management fund has a balanced budget at $20 million, pretty neutral to prior year with a slight decrease of $327,000. And recreation fund is a balanced budget of $11.6 million, a decrease of $1.8 million over prior year, whereas we did utilize fund balance in prior year of $2.5 million. That brings us to our new positions added. So again, it's 114 new positions to maintain current level of service, 77 of those within the public safety division. And did want to highlight, as Mr. Webster said, this does have 2 positions for the newly created behavioral service department, 11 in the INR division, 6 in administration division, 17 in airport, and 3 in solid waste. So looking at the workforce as a whole, with those new positions added, that brings our total position count to 3,383 positions, with 56% of those being in public safety division at 1,902. In compensation for our workforce, we're recommending a 5% increase across the workforce, an increase in Christmas gift to $1,150 for full-time, $575 for part-time, creation of the HEO4 job class, that's new this year, and then we have targeted increases for specific job classes, the patrol officer, firefighters, firefighter paramedics, 911 emergency specialists, corrections officers, deputy sheriff, and all levels of heavy equipment operators. So we're recommending to increase the minimum salary for these positions. So that would bring patrol officers, corrections officers, and deputy sheriff to a minimum of $60,000, firefighters to $50,500, a certified firefighter paramedic to $62,500, 911 emergency specialist at $47,000, and do note here they have additional planned increases given to them upon completion of certification. And heavy equipment operators levels 1 through 3, various minimum salary ranges starting from $43,000 to $50,000. And we also built in additional increases to avoid compression across these departments. The total investment for these increases is $22 million into our workforce. And that's the highlights of what's in the budget. If there's any questions. Okay. Can you press your mic, please?
Mr. Allen mentioned the volunteers the other day. Can we take a look at that between now and maybe second reading, just maybe see where we may be on that, if we might see a little bit additional for those as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
And did staff have a chance to get the comparison done for our salaries compared to other local government entities? I didn't see it in the packet. I know Mr. Causey wanted to see it as well.
Yeah, the counties as well, Greenville and Charleston.
Thank you. We're the third largest, according to Barry. But I'll let y'all. Oh, I gotcha.
He's thinking about population.
All right, speaking of Barry, Mr. Spivey.
Good morning. Do you have the? Okay. What I will share with you here is what we've titled Service Level and Growth Analysis, but it gives you an idea of where we're making our investments and the strategy that we're using of how we will address the growth within the county. And it affects, I guess, a lot of what you've already heard here this morning and leverages that as you will see. First, you have the.
It's not working.
Okay. Thank you. We will address several things this morning as a part of this. First is population analysis, employment, inflation, operational growth needs, as well as funding opportunities that we see in the future in that regard. And it appears that our technology is not working just properly, so give us just a moment. Good? Okay. Next slide, please. First, we'll look at population. And what we wanted to share with you is some brief comments that we bring or receive from the State Fiscal Affairs Authority. And they share with us several things. First, we want to look at the growth South Carolina is experiencing. What you will see on this graph represents South Carolina's share of the U.S. population, U.S. payrolls, and U.S. personal income. And the trend that you will see there is that we are becoming a larger share of the nation's population and all those factors. So we are seeing a positive growth in Horry County, or in South Carolina specifically, that is exceeding the growth that we're seeing in the nation as a whole. So that's positive for us and represents good things, I think, from an economic standpoint. The next slide gives you a representation of where growth is occurring within South Carolina. And it's interesting to see that essentially you have 3 counties that are growing in excess of 30%. Horry County being one of those, and that's in a 10-year period of 2020 to 2030, which is the forecast we shared earlier. But you do have Horry County, Lancaster County, and Jasper County all in that category. Right behind us is a group of counties of 4 that are growing in excess of 15%, but less than 30. That's Berkeley, York, Greenville, and Spartanburg in that regard. Overall, you will see that there's a different result based on where you live within the state. Because you actually have 5 counties that are actually declining almost as much as 30% over that projected period of time. You have 13 counties that are projected to grow or reduce by 5% or greater in that regard out of the 46 counties. So 19, in essence, are growing up, 18 are actually reducing, and 9 are remaining flat within the county. So a very disparate outcome within the state, but we are fortunate to have the resources, the place and environment to live, attractive tax rates that are drawing a number of people here to our community. And the next slide really reflects to you how our growth is occurring. And you will notice, it's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but if you notice that long line, that's Horry County. What that is indicating to us is that our birth rate is less than our deaths within the county. From a natural natural growth perspective, more people are dying than are being born in Horry County. Our largest part of our growth is migration. It is people coming to this area in that regard. We're not alone in that respect because you have others similar to that, especially the Spartanburg, Greenville, Beaufort, Berkeley counties, as well as Lexington are having a large influx of new residents coming from outside the area. But you do have a number like us where our birth rate is less than our death rate, and that's Horry, Georgetown, Beaufort, Orangeburg, Aiken, Anderson, Pickens, Cherokee, Lancaster. So we're very similar to other areas of the state in that regard. The next slide gives you a very real representation of that. If you look back to 1970, you will see that the majority of our population was young, were children, youth at that point in time, young adults. In 2020, we looked almost like a straight element where all the representation is almost the same from a percent of the population, and our percentage that's actually above 55 or 65 is much greater as a part of our population. In 2030, we see almost a very similar representation as what we experience right now. So we seem to be growing at a consistent manner currently, but our larger, older population certainly driving a larger share of our community. The next slide shows you representation in a very real way. In regards to percentage, we're now at over 65 plus, represents greater than 20% of our population. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone in that regard, because as we see the people that are moving into our community, it is a retirement-oriented type group, so they're in that age group. That does drive specific things for our community, though. And we will see that as we touch on the EMS needs of our organization, but also it's a big driver in the expansion, rapid expansion of the medical community within the county. Those needs are going to just continue to grow in that respect. The next slide does talk about education as a part of population, and what we do see is that over time, we become more educated as well. The individuals that have less than a high school education or just a high school graduation are reducing as a percentage of the total, and those with college and with college degrees are increasing. So we do see a very great emphasis on education and development within our workforce and community in that respect. So that's significant because that's another area of our economy that is growing with Coastal, with Horry Georgetown Tech, with the other institutions of that nature. It gives us a more broader income level for economic purposes, as well as a growing segment of our diversification in the economy. Next, we'll look at some very specific employment-related issues. First is the total employment, which basically is exceeding the forecast for South Carolina. So we're continuing to grow in that regard and to expand. So the demand for jobs are greater than the supply of workers currently, and that's contributing to the inflation that we see on the wage side. It's almost a seller's market in that regard. They can go where they desire because there's always a job open around us. Next, we have the employment of persons, unemployed persons per job. And what you will see at the very end here, in 2024, 2025, and really it started in 2021 roughly, there's fewer people than the open jobs within the market. So we're having to be very highly competitive to be able to attract and retain our workers in that regard. The next slide shows the employment growth by county over the past 10 years. And what you will see at the very top is Berkeley, Jasper, where we've had some very large manufacturers that have made announcements and have implemented very large production facilities. We do expect that Florence County will rise very rapidly in that because of some of the announcements that's been made over there when they actually begin the hiring process. Horry County is number 8 within the state. That's one we hope to increase in that regard with our efforts with the EDC in that perspective. But you will notice there's a number of counties in the state where actually population's declining, but actually job opportunities are declining there as well. And we are very blessed in that perspective. Next slide looks at the various sectors within the economy. And you see a number of those that have grown over this period of time. That's in 2024 between the United States and South Carolina. So we're growing at a faster rate in these categories. In federal and state workers, we're ahead. In leisure and hospitality, which perhaps is no surprise in that regard, but also in durable goods manufacturing. We actually are ahead of the growth that the rest of the country is seeing in that respect. Trade and transport, utilities are higher as well. But you also see a number of categories that we are trailing the growth that we're seeing, and that's some of the more professional trades with financial activities, information, professional and business services, education, health services, and all of those. That's segments of our market we desire to increase in that regard or need to focus on. Over the past 10 years, this slide gives us an idea from 2014 to 2024. We see in most of those cases, we are ahead currently, so we're making headroads, but we're still not at the national level. And if you look at trades, transport, business, professional, education, leisure and hospitality, we're trending higher in terms of our growth in that regard. The next slide is one that's very telling for our community. And it is the average wage, average annual raise. And if you look for Horry County, we're number 37th in the state. And the average at $57,000, Horry County is just over 45. So that is a gap that's inherent to the nature of our own economy with the high level of service industry that we have, potential for the construction side being underreported in that regard, as well as the retirement income. Some of that would not be reported as annual wages. They're living on a pension or investments or those type things which would not calculate or figure into this measure in that regard. One thing that we see as a local agency, local government agency, is a gap in the demand and the growth of our services and the available workforce to be able to fulfill those services that we need to provide. It is predicted that over the next 15 years that there's going to continue to be that gap. And that's going to be a challenge for us to recruit and retain the existing employees that we have. Potentially, and this is the state as a whole, could be as short as 10,000 people in terms of meeting the need that we see going to be required of local government throughout the state. Next, we'll focus on inflation. Consumer Price Index actually is just around the forecasted amount or just under the forecasted amount, but what you will see is it is still trending over the target of 2%. So we do anticipate that that will continue and be somewhere in that 2.5% to 3% over the next year. If we look at the wage growth, we actually see that we have been playing a catch-up in South Carolina. The dotted line, which represents South Carolina, has actually exceeded the wage growth that has occurred at the national level. So we have been under the people we're competing against, and we see that over the last several years we've made steps towards bridging that gap, but that gap still does remain in that regard for us to get the highest quality employee and retain those. This slide reflects the estimates for sales tax. And what you will see is between 2020 and 2023-24, there was a large increase in sales tax. And that is what the state is benefiting from and how they're able actually to make some of the adjustments that they're making in lowering the personal income rates. They are currently discussing there in Columbia. That rapid growth has set us at a new plateau here in the county, which gives us the options to do a lot more things and was the genesis and the basis of our RIDE program, RIDE 4, at the large amounts that we're able to address there. But what you do see is a very steady growth. They're predicting that that will continue to grow. So that is a strength that we have in that respect and gives us a stable revenue stream as well as a safety net. The next slide looks at the interest rates and monetary policy. And I guess I'm old enough now to have seen a lot of this chart from the very beginning to where we are today. If you look at the years between 2008 and 2018, roughly a 10-year period, it's almost at a historical low. So many people remember that period of time and consider where we're at today as being so much higher, and that's true, no doubt. But historically, where we're at today is not necessarily an unreasonable place. We do hope, though, that it does go down because that is a primary driver in the home ownership here for families within our organization, within our community, excuse me. What we do see is a number of people that are buying within our community today may be paying cash or mostly cash. So the interest rate's less important to them in terms of their purchase decision. But for the worker, for the new graduate and new family, that interest rate does make a difference for their abilities to provide for their family's needs. So we're hoping that that does come down and that will spur some additional growth in our real estate industry. Mortgage interest rates here are just over 6%, and that's the highest rates in over 20 years. But that does impact the community in that regard. Next, we look at the county property tax revenue and how that has grown. It is sobering to consider that within the state of South Carolina, in essence, just a few counties represent over 50% of all tax revenue that's generated. That reflects a great diversity of our state and the economy of our state in that regard. But you essentially have 6 individual counties that represent over 50%, and Horry County is the number 6th one in that position, in that regard. So we are very blessed in that regard to have a tax base that exceeds the balance of the other counties. The next slide, though, gives you a representation of the growth over the last 10 years, and that's 2012 to 2022. And you will see some counties have grown tremendously over that 10-year period. Beaufort, Charleston, Greenville, Lexington. Horry has grown indeed, but the difference between those 10-year period has not nearly been as significant as some of the other counties. So our fiscal policy, our conservativeness, certainly has given us a better outcome in terms of the tax that our community has to pay to cover the services that we're providing. And that's a positive outcome. That's a good stewardship outcome in that regard. What's helped us to do that is reflected on the next slide, which is our value of one meal. And this is actually presented from the school's perspective, but if you recognize the school district and ours are essentially overlapping within the county. Horry County is the second highest value per meal in the state. And actually the growth that we've seen in the last 2 years actually will increase or lessen the gap between us and Charleston County. We've been blessed with that growth, and that has helped us to fund the level of services that we need to provide. And the next slide is just a summary of economic assumptions that the state is using in its budget process from 24 to 25 compared to 25 and 26. They're reflecting that personal income growth will be slightly under in the coming year, 4.6 versus 5.7. That employment growth will actually be slower in that regard at 1.7%, and that inflation would essentially be very, very almost identical at 2.5% between the 2 fiscal years. The next area I would like to focus you on is what we would call operational growth needs. And it gives you an idea of what's going on that we're trying to address from a growth perspective. The first slide is population growth. On the left, what you will see is a heat map, as we would call it. It shows you where population is growing. You will see that it is centered around the major transportation corridors as well as along the coast. But what you will notice is that over time, more growth is going westward in that regard and impacting the rural communities of our county. 75% of our population does actually live between the Waccamaw River and the coast. 12% additional lives between the Waccamaw River and what we would term a geographic center of our county. If you drew a line just simply through the geographic center of the county, roughly 87% of our population lives on the east side. 13%, which represents 50% of our geography, only 13% of our population live within. So sometimes we actually use the phrase that we have two counties in one. And sometimes that's very true. The needs are different between those two areas. Though from a tax perspective, we're to give them the same level of service, whether they're in the rural area or in the urbanized coastal area. The next map is a new one that we have not looked at in this way previously. But you have seen the little chart on the right here that reflects the 5th Police Precinct, which is in the yellow in the very center here. That is the new part, and it's very small compared to some of the other areas. But if you look on the left-hand side, it actually gives you a representation of the calls that they have responded to over the last 12 months. This is a 12-month period, and you will notice that between the South Precinct and this new 5th Precinct, the majority of the calls for the county are centered in those two areas. There are additional calls in the Central Precinct, in the North Precinct, and less so in the West Precinct, which has a larger geographic area. But it gives you an idea of where our service is being demanded. But we're still providing a similar level of service all throughout the county in that respect. What you will see is that we have used the COPS grant to supplement our force in that regard. We have added the additional CIT teams and SWAT teams, the SRO focus that we've had over the last few years of being back in the schools. We do have the Animal Care Center barn, kennel, and clinic projects that are underway to help supplement their needs in the short-term period of time. The next map looks at our waste management centers. And you've seen this chart before, and it represents where the new growth is occurring with our two new centers for North Myrtle Beach being relocated, but also the new center on Highway 90 and Highway 22, as well as an expanded center on Highway 9 there at Longs. We have expansions that have already been approved at the Highway 90 landfill area. We have in the budget a Forest Brook new center to help service that center area of the county and take some relief off of Socastee and Ocean Bays, as well as a Scipio Lane expansion. Again, each of these are trending very high from a usage standpoint and where we need to focus our investments and resources there. Over time, though, we've got to look at a large number of expansions throughout the county to better service our community with the growth that's occurring. Brooksville is an area that needs to be addressed. That will be a relocation and expansion. The Longs that I mentioned, we have the property, but we will be funding that expansion in the near future. And we are actively looking for land to be able to expand our existing centers and locate areas that we would need to put a center in the future. With the level of growth that we're having currently within the county, I think it's incumbent upon us to be aggressive in that regard and try to secure those sites now while the land is available. We've seen times before, recently, that growth has come to us and hindered us from being able to grow in the future because there's no available land around us. Next is the fire stations that you will see. This map is very busy, but if you look closely at it, what you will see is this is every one of our stations currently within the county. And if you look at it geographically, it reflects that we have good coverage for our county in that respect. What you will note, though, is those purple areas that are kind of jagged and small, just kind of isolated throughout the county, is what we would term as ISO 10 coverage areas. That means essentially it's greater than 5 miles, not as the crow flies, but as you have the ability to drive on individual roads to get to a location, is greater than the 5-mile boundary for their best insurance coverage and protection in that regard. And you will notice that it's down in the south end, it's along 701, 378, 501, out in the Gunter Swamp area, and some of our more rural areas are touched in that similar manner. Those are issues longer term. We need to make some decisions about how we can serve that population in that regard. So people living there today, but also we want to make sure we're not adding to our risk for those people, that they know that it's ISO 10 if they're buying a house or developing a house or property in that area. Recently, we made great strides. We've expanded Longs and added career staff. We've expanded Forest Brook. We've added Nixonville 1P. We've added Shell. We've done safer grants to bolster the staff in that regard. We've done an expansion is currently underway at Finkley, Socastee University. We added a second crew in University this year. If you remember, we have 2 functions in that station. We had a hazmat unit as well as an engine, but the one crew, if they were on a hazmat call, they could not answer a fire call. If they were on a fire call, they could not answer a hazmat call. So we added a second crew in that station. Well, in your budget for this year, I believe there are 2 crews, actually 4, fire in terms of their expansion. One of those is servicing in the Ocean Bays areas, adding a career staff there for that engine, which has been volunteer up to this point. But then also proposal is at Little River to add a second crew there. Not only do they have the engine, they also have a ladder, but they also have the fireboat. So if they're out on any one of those 3, they cannot answer a call on the other 2, or either of the 2. Adding a second staff within that facility would give the ability to go multiple directions at the same time. We're considering and recognize there's a need in the Bay Road area, and this might be a new volunteer station. Volunteers play a critical role for us to be able to serve our customers and our community in that respect. Training center, relocating that. We're looking at that at 2027 to leverage the public safety training facility, to rebuild Red Bluff, to expand Maple. We've got the Goretown expansion in 2026 and the new Prestwick in 2026 as well. The next slide really shows us something on EMS. And I think it's critical to recognize this tries to tell 2 stories. One, the map here on the right-hand side is what we would call a heat map of where the calls for EMS services are originating from. And you will see it very much similar to the population. It's following those transportation corridors, those waterways, the coast in that regard, but it is certainly continuing to grow as people move westward in that respect. And if you look very closely, there's actually a section there in Myrtle Beach that's just a couple miles square that has enough calls to fill an ambulance for an entire year, over 12 months. So we have multiple ambulances that we are running on a daily basis. Some of those are medics, meaning they have the paramedic, advanced life support or LINS response. We have the basics ambulance, which is just the basic life support, which has 2 EMTs and not a paramedic. What you will see, though, is this chart on the left-hand side represents the 4 quarters of the year. And this is over a calendar period. First quarter, we have several ambulances that are in greater than 30% or greater than 40% utilization. That means those crews are moving most of the day in terms of responding to calls. What you will see beginning in the second quarter is you have several ambulances actually getting to that red category. From a utilization standpoint, it's exceeding 50%. And that's a misnomer from the standpoint that it doesn't mean they're sitting at the station for 12 hours a day. Because there's time to actually clean the ambulance, prepare it for the next call, or in addition to this, as well as the paperwork that has to go along with that call, for billing purposes. The second quarter is our busiest quarter of the year. That's April, May, and June. Third quarter, July, August, September, second busiest quarter in that regard. So not only are we seeing a great growth in our total demand, but it is centralized in certain periods of time. So we'll have to make our investments to address each of those issues, and that's why you will see, reflected on the next slide, that we are looking at adding an ambulance later this year in Myrtle Beach area, addressing the needs at North Myrtle Beach, Socastee, Conway, Ocean Bays, Finkley, River Oaks, Highway 707, and Highway 501, and those areas over the next several years. Those will be where we actually need to make our investments in that regard. We're looking at a couple relocations. One we're talking about currently is the ambulance in Loris actually moving to the Goretown Fire Station to better serve that southern part, that middle part of the county between there and Longs. Surfside would be moving to Prestwick when that facility is opened. And North Myrtle Beach into this potentially new Windy Hill location that was mentioned earlier in our capital project. Many times where they actually are stationed at reflects only a part of the day that they're there, because once they start a call, they may be away from the actual station and around a different geographic area for most of their shift in that regard, responding to calls in that regard. But we've been very benefited recently with the SAFER grant that helped us in 2023 add staff here. They've added the new harm reduction team, medics, additions at Longs and Ocean Bays, and new basic ambulance additions at Nixonville, Waupee, Shell, the MYR, Lee's Landing, Pitch Landing, and Allen. So we've made a great stride towards meeting the needs of our community in the recent budget, but got more that we need to do in that regard, and that has to be a priority for us. The next slide just looks at the general things that we're doing. Growth is impacting every element of our community and operation in that regard. Public Works, they need that expansion opportunity, the complex, the fleet expansion, the central substation and equipment shed that you've heard about. Recreation, we have 3 new rec centers, new park expansions, as well as beach bathrooms and boat landings. From a general standpoint, administrative standpoint, we have the J.P. Stevens complex that's being replaced, the Central Coast complex that's being added, the new Second Avenue Annex that you saw some additions for the sheriff in earlier, as well as the Sanders renovation here in this general area here to supply our staffing needs. Detention Center study is underway, and that will be a placeholder in our budget that we will need to address. Behavioral services are being added there, Ride 4, terminal expansion, rental car parking. All those expansions are necessary for us to deal with the growth in that regard. The next focuses on personnel. And it's interesting to see that over the last 5 years, we've added over 31% to our workforce in that regard. That's been what it's taken to deal with the growth and the maintenance of our level of service in that respect. The biggest areas of that growth are in public safety and I&R from a percentage standpoint, from a real growth or from a percentage standpoint. We currently have 264 open positions. 220 of those are full-time positions, and that's 40 open positions in our patrol officers, correction officers, sheriff's deputies. That's over 10% of those positions are not filled. Firefighters, we're down 36 positions, that's 9%. HEO2s, or HEOs, the whole group, is actually down 24 positions. That's 26% of all the positions we have are currently open. So we feel like the recommendation you have from a staffing standpoint, from a compensation standpoint, should go a long way towards addressing those issues. We also are down on E911, 9 positions, or 14% today. So these 114 positions that's being added is certainly what we feel like is the minimum necessary for us to address the growth issues here within the community. The last or the next item I've got is just to talk about the growth needs. In 2025, we have a focus on addressing the detention center. That's one of our big decision points that we're currently in today. We have the Rural Civic and Equestrian Center investigation and study that we're doing, and the Pelican Stadium decision. That's some of the main items that we have before us at the moment in a decision manner. In 2026, we'll be focusing, and the recommendation you have is to add compensation and new positions to address growth. We have the bond issuances that were mentioned earlier from the general fire and fire lease. We have the design for the detention center that will be there. The Ride 4 kickoff will be one of our priorities in this coming year, as well as the local option sales tax study and decision, and I'm going to share more about that opportunity with you. And then we have continued need for road funding for Ride 4 as we move forward. In 2027, 2028, we have continued need to look at employees and compensation, as well as any new positions to address growth, additional bond issuances, and we will have our second of the hospitality loans closings. That would meet those project needs that were approved by council earlier, as well as construction and staffing for the detention center will be in that time period. And then the implementation, if we're successful in terms of discussing the local option sales tax and continue efforts on road funding for Ride 4. And Chairman, I've got a little bit still to do, so I don't know when you want to take a break. Okay. We wanted to address and just remind council of a couple things we have from a funding perspective. We've talked about what we're seeing in terms of growth in our property tax revenues, our other revenues, but there are things in the near horizon that will benefit Horry County in that regard. The first is just to remind you of two things. We have the Air Force Base Tax Increment Financing District, which is set to terminate in about that 28, 29 time frame. Not sure the exact time. There's a number of bonds there that are in a process of being repaid, and as soon as they have the funds sufficient to repay that, then all that tax revenue will then be dispersed back to the normal taxing authorities. Today, we are receiving roughly $1.4 million from the TIF. Once it unwinds in today's dollars, which will be more in the future, but in today's dollars, it's roughly $3.7 million. So that's an increase of over $2 million that we will have coming in new tax revenue or existing tax revenue that's being returned to us that's no longer going to projects. So as we look forward into the future, that's one of the areas that we can pull monies for growth. Secondly, the B&C Multi-County Business Park is in a similar process, and the time frame is almost identical, 28, 29, when those bonds are going to be repaid. Recognizing, however, though, that our increase is not nearly as material on that one. We will get another roughly $500,000 in additional revenue that would be available for us for general use in that regard once those taxes are returned in its normal place. The next slide just reminds us of the opportunities we have from a millage standpoint. We have the ability this year to actually increase our millage 3.2 mills. With Act 388, though, we have a carry forward for multiple years previously, the three previous years, less any amounts that we may have increased. So in theory, we could increase our millage today 17.5 mills. That is a large percentage in that regard. The recommendation before you is no millage increase for this year. And that means we will lose this year roughly 3.9 mills from the fourth year previous. That's the carry forward. The next slide gives you a bit better representation of that. What you see there is that in 2026, that reflects the 17.5 mills that is available. The red portion, excuse me, is what we actually will lose, but recognize that will be replaced by the new measurement of growth in population and CPI. We will carry forward into 2027 in that process from the 2026 year, 13.6 mils to the subsequent year. If you look at the next slide, it gives you a better representation of what growth has meant to us. This includes the blue shading, which is CPI, the orange, which is population growth, and the combination of those two, and that's been very steep for us. Our millage growth is reflected on the green line, our tax base growth on the blue line, and blue line tax has really mirrored CPI. But it has not given us sufficient revenues to be able to tackle the additional demands of service in that regard. But we have had an average growth in our tax base of over 7% over the last 8 years, excuse me. The next opportunity we would like to just remind council of is something we've shared with you, I think, annually for the last few years, and that is the local option sales tax. It's something we have not implemented in the past, or as far as I know, that we've never asked our taxpayers to consider through a referendum. It is similar to the transportation tax or education tax referendum that we've just passed in that regard. It's something our taxpayers would make a decision about. What's different from this option is that it's not devoted to a specific project like the transportation tax or education that has to go to a listed group of projects. Local option sales tax has two components. And that would be a property tax credit fund and a county municipal revenue fund. And that's 71% property tax abatement, a credit that goes to our taxpayers throughout the county taxpayers as well as municipal taxpayers. And as there's a mechanism to actually make that calculation and divide those resources. But the county municipal revenue fund is the 29% component, and that would give us additional operating revenues from which we can address the growth needs of our county in that regard. So at the same time, it gives something back to our taxpayers and recognize it's not only to primary residences, it's to all property taxpayer types, to your vehicles, to your personal property, to your real property, whether that's 4% or 6% property in that regard. The next slide gives you a little representation of what the state looks like in that regard. Actually, 32 counties within our state have adopted the local option sales tax. Those similar to us or close to us, Charleston, Richland, Berkeley, have those in place and have had those for years. Marion, Florence, and Williamsburg also have them. So it's not unique to large counties, but it's really pervasive throughout the state in that regard. Counties, small counties, and large counties in that respect. It's been around since 1990. SEDOR collects the money. And just remember, there is a Robin Hood provision within this program that 5% comes off the top and gets reallocated to less fortunate counties within the state. That's just part of the process in that regard. We're familiar with that. We see that on a number of our revenue sources are divided with other people in the state. But you can see there's a number of counties that would have that within their abilities to help fund. The next slide just gives more information about those two funds, the 71% on the property tax, and then that's divided 67% to the county and 33% to the municipalities based on population on that piece. What you will see, you say, well, is that fair? Well, in reality, if the county is given a credit, the county is given the credit to unincorporated people as well as municipal taxpayers. So yes, ultimately it is fair. I think the municipalities benefit greater than the unincorporated areas, but their taxes are higher. So it is somewhat proportionate in that regard. The county municipal revenue fund is 29%, and that is split 50-50 based on the population as well as the location of actual collection. The next slide does share with you one relevant issue in terms of the cap, which means that we need to do some investigation from a legal perspective and may have to make a modification in terms of some of the state statutes to be able to consider this, that there is some caps imposed, and we need to see legally if we are constrained by those caps or not. The next slide actually gives you a representation of what that could mean in terms of dollars for the county. Based on our 2026 value of a meal estimated, we, in this formula, would receive potentially $56.5 million towards a tax credit for county taxpayers. That's the equivalent of almost 14.5 meals that our taxpayers could benefit from. On the revenue side, that's the equivalent of almost 5 meals or almost $20 million that could go to add personnel or increase compensation within our employee groups, to add services in that regard. And each of the municipalities would be benefited in a similar manner in that regard. So what is unique about our situation that is different from most counties in the state is that somebody else pays the majority of our sales tax. It's not our resident. Now, if this was just a decision of how you wanted to collect the money, you would say, or I could pay a sales tax or I could pay my property tax, and it kind of washes. But if I have somebody from the outside paying the majority of it, we all benefit. And it perhaps better aligns some of the demands for our service from the tourism side to the ones actually paying that through their hospitality, through their sales tax, all those elements in that regard. So I think it's a better alignment to consider in that respect, but it will give us the resources to be able to grow our county to meet the demands placed on us by those tourists as well. So I think it's something I would encourage the county to consider in that regard. Now, if we look back over the last 5 years or so, this team, your team, this group sitting over here and here, have dealt with a number of things. I think we successfully navigated the COVID issue, the pandemic, and came out much stronger and better situated in that regard as a team. We've taken proactive steps to bridge the growth gap. We have brought forward the Ride For opportunity and had a successful referendum with our taxpayers. I think we built relationships with our sister organizations, municipalities, utilities, other governments within the county. I think we have a strong team, a good team. But if there's one thing that we could add to that, it would be local option sales tax. I think that would be one of the best things that we could do for our taxpayers and for our community in that regard. That would be a plus, plus, plus to what we've accomplished over the last 5 years. Today, we have basically 3 things we are requesting your consideration of. It would be first reading of the budget, which is Ordinance 39, 2025. We have a budget transfer resolution. And I apologize, I don't have that one in front of me to give you the specifics on that, but I can go back and get that in just a moment, as well as the admissions tax project resolution. Horry County adopted a admissions tax district around the Fantasy Harbor. And actually, I do have that information with me, so give me just a second. Back a number of years ago, there's remaining funds in that district of roughly $490,000, or $470, I believe it is, $460, excuse me. We have not used those monies in a number of years. I think the last item we used for that was actually a fire suppression pump system to bolster the fire suppression system within that area. It was after Hard Rock Park or the music park closed. I guess the actual pump that serviced multiple pieces of that property was involved in that actual construction, and when it closed, they did not have that same service to maintain it. The county approved a expenditure to be able to have Grand Strand actually install a new one to service that area. So the $460,000 that are left, we would like to request or suggest that council consider that within the district area for pedestrian safety, which is a critical need there, as well as adding match funding for one or more actual bus stops, physical bus stops, to help guide the people in terms of where they need to be, so they're not loitering around other private businesses. That area is going through a redevelopment. And so you're seeing a lot of new investment going into that George Bishop Parkway area. And I think both of those elements would be a great addition to the look and feel and safety of that area. So that's the emissions tax district. On the budget transfer resolution, we have savings in addition in existing projects that we were asking that council consider moving to additional priorities. We have identified a number of projects that are in primarily the public safety area, which is the public safety software, the P25 infrastructure, which is the radio system, the emergency operations center, as well as the Socastee Fire Station and other projects like the body-worn cameras, and some interest that's been earned on specific bond issuances. All of that totals roughly $3 million. And since those are primarily public safety related projects, we would recommend that we transfer that into the public safety training facility. Keeps it in that area that benefits those same individuals in that regard. We have recommended that we move some money from waste management fund to go ahead and allow us to consider purchasing additional properties. I mentioned in the slide earlier, there's a number of needs. And what we have found is that if we have an acre or 2 acres in an existing facility, if we can add 2 or 3 to that, it costs us a lot less to expand a center than it is to go buy new land and relocate a center. So we would like to be strategic to go and expand those opportunities, and we've looked at all areas throughout the county, all of our existing facilities in that regard. So that's $2.2 million to give us the opportunity to go after that growth and expansion of those facilities. That's coming from waste management. The third part of that is looking at actual fire rescue needs, and it's asking for $560,000 for actual additions at several locations. That would come from existing fire and general areas, contingency. The Animal Care Center, we would like to suggest that we add $200,000 to allow us to go ahead and design and get ready to permit a clinic expansion at the animal care facility. So that gives us money to make the design and permitting, and that it would be in the 2027 budget for construction. And then on the public works side, we have $1.5 million savings in the 2nd Avenue Annex project that we had. We are suggesting that we transfer that to bolster the budget for the Privet Road expansion. As you may remember, we just had our referendum for RIDE approved, and we need additional space out there, and that would give them the space that they need to utilize that facility to meet their current needs. So that's the transfer resolution itself. After that occurs, we still have just under $10 million of contingency in the CIP itself that we're holding for future needs. Okay.
But does anybody have any questions on Mr. Spivey's presentation? Cam? Push your button.
Thank you, Barry. Just summing up the local option sales tax, just for people back home, it means basically a 71% property tax reduction for homeowners and businesses alike. And you just correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the 71% is the amount that's dedicated to property tax. It would be the equivalent, I think, of roughly 14.5 mills compared to what we're having today on the countywide basis, just over 51. So it's not 71% reduction in tax, but 71% of the funding goes to a tax reduction.
Goes to a tax.
Which is very material, yes.
Right. So that would probably be one of the largest tax reductions probably in Horry County history.
I would assume so, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Additionally, the revenues that are remitted back to the county, we could use those. We could use that money for to enhance our personnel demands and raises and that sort of thing, right?
Yes, there's no restrictions on how the county can use that money. It would be general resources.
Right. And tourists would pay the bulk of the tax.
Yes, sir. I think from the last study I'm aware of, it was and over 60% of the revenue comes from non-residents of Horry County.
Right. So it looks like a win on all fronts.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you very much for your help in this endeavor.
Okay.
Good job, Mr. Crawford. That was an excellent question. I would just like to make a comment on all of what you just said. Horry County staff, Horry County government, Horry County Council has done some remarkable things over the last 4 years. Getting through COVID without losing anybody, without having to do anything major was extremely successful. Passing Ride 4 will be transformative for Horry County. Getting the tourists to pay for most of these roads is wonderful. It's going to make things so much better for us. This local sales option tax is the other component. It's going to be transformative, like Mr. Crawford said. The visitors here, we're going to be different than some of these counties that already have it, because the counties that already have it, their local citizens are paying for it. It's like you said, Mr. Spivey, you want to pay your property taxes or your sales taxes. This is not going to punish non-landowners, and it's going to help the landowners because it's going to be the sales tax paid for primarily by the visitors here. And those formulas, it's math, but it boils down to a tremendous savings in millages, 14.5 mills, which would do so much more for our budget. We can continue to accommodate our firefighters, our first responders, everybody involved, making this whole place much, much better. So we've got to focus on making sure that we can do it legally. I know that we're doing everything we can do in the legal department to make sure we can do this, put this on the next available referendum, educate the voters that this is a win-win for everybody involved, and we can finish the second part of the transformative part for helping everybody in Horry County. All right, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Not sure if this is for Mr. Spivey or for counsel, legal counsel. Would we be able, if we were able to pass the local option sales tax, which I think is a fantastic idea, would we be able to only apply that benefit to the people who've been here for 5 or 10 years, trying to take care of our home folks? State thing?
I don't believe that would be possible.
Okay.
The credit is applied to the ultimate total tax levy.
Here and now.
Yeah, so
I thought
whoever
that
owns
might
it
be the answer.
at that point gets the benefit.
Yeah. And the second thing is, I really appreciate staff and council working to continue to raise public safety and raise the wages here in the county. And I don't think anybody would say it was enough, but I do think it's a great step in the right direction. And I appreciate continuing to try to take care of our people, make Horry County a great place to live, but also to work. Thank you.
Mr. Crawford.
One other thing to note, just for everybody back home watching, I think the local option sales tax, Barry, you just correct me, I think it would help council to avoid any potential tax increases in the future.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And that's part of what we did this year. No raises is, and we're making it happen. We're not going to be extravagant or anything, but we're making it happen. And if we can continue to do this, it's going to be so much better when we don't have to do a millage raise. So, yes, sir, Mr. Howard.
Just a quick question. Where would this tax be collected? I'm assuming same as the transportation tax?
Yes, sir, it would be identical in that
Identical.
respect. It is a county-wide tax, but
Right.
the bulk of the commercial areas that are generating it are certainly along the coast, as well as the building industry. You know, every house that's being built in Horry County at the moment, the buyer's not paying sales tax at the point of sale, but every 2x4, every appliance, there's tax being paid at the purchase of that. So it is being collected countywide in that respect.
Has there been any communication with our counterparts, or your counterparts, I should say, in the municipalities about the potential local option sales tax, and what is the feedback you're getting from that?
Presently, I don't know that we have had any direct discussions in that regard. I know we have been discussing it here for several years. I know as we were going through the discussion of transportation tax, we discussed it and mentioned that at some of those meetings, the small group meetings, and that included the municipalities. But I think it's the time that we would perhaps consider something like RIDE, where we bring a community together in a process to investigate and make a recommendation.
Would that, I'm sorry, would that look like a tax commission, similar to what we did with RIDE, or just be more of an
Well, I
informal?
don't believe there's any formality in the state code in regards to it, but it could mimic or be similar, yes.
There's no requirement for that type commission, like the capital project sales tax has, that we mimicked in the transportation tax. So we will encourage feedback from the municipalities. We've brought it up when we meet with them on an individual basis, just in general, that this is coming.
Right.
But we haven't shared any figures, because we don't, the figures you saw today are sort of the first draft that I hadn't seen until today, too. So.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as the council direction, I think that if anybody else has anything they want to add to this, the council direction would be, as always, maintain the level of services. You've got recommendations for raises up there, recommendations for new personnel. It's in the budget with no millage raise. I think that's what we want to do here. If there's any other questions, we'll move on. There is no executive session. If there's no other questions, we'll go into our action items at this point in time. Any other questions? Okay, the first action item is an ordinance to raise revenue, make appropriations, and adopt a budget for Horry County, South Carolina for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2026. Is there a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. You opposed?
Nay.
All right, that carries 11-1. Next up is a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds from the General Capital Improvement Plan, Inflation Reserve, and contingency to the construction of various capital projects. Motion? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Finally, a resolution approving the priority for the use of admission tax revenue generated by the Fantasy Harbor Admissions Tax District. Mr. Mascarelli, is there a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Anything else for the further benefit of the cause? Hearing none, that concludes the business for today's budget retreat. Mr. Dennis. Mr. Dennis. Yeah. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.